G'day. Go ahead and look in the description for timestamps or follow along. Let's say you've done some more work on your Unity project, and for some reason, the assets you've imported also imported a bunch of project settings and ruins your project. Or maybe your drive that has your project on it dies. What do? A, freak out a little. B, freak out an appropriate amount. Or C, let the panic set in. Well, thanks to GitHub, they're the hub to give you the D. Option D, the ChillX GigaChad. Whether you need to remake your project or simply re-import your scripts or settings, GitHub's version control is here. For most beginners, and especially myself when I started, GitHub was super intimidating and I didn't want to spend the mental capacity on trying to learn that. But what if I told you there was a really simple program to use, can get it all done with just a few clicks of a button? That's where GitHub Desktop enters the room. GitHub Desktop is a simple, easy to use application to get you started into keeping the peace of mind that your project is safe against any unwanted changes. Well, safer. GitHub serves as a backup cloud storage for your projects, so you can always have them saved on the cloud or with the click of a few buttons. And don't worry, the process is simple and straightforward. But before I skip over into that, let's just talk about a couple of the benefits before I dive in. Once you've pushed your project to GitHub, you can access it anywhere, anytime, even through your browser. So if you're a masochist like me and you go out and about and you have your light bulb moment, you can just whip out your phone and edit your code and impress your friends with your technical know-how. Or at least, I wish that's how it goes. It usually involves me talking to myself, scratching my head, and then my friends trying to distance themselves from me. Fair enough, really. It can also be used to quickly share your scripts to anyone, whether it be publicly or privately. And I don't know about you, but I've screwed up way more in my projects than I care to admit. If I had to start from the ground up each time I made a vital error, I think I would have given up on programming by now. But again, thankfully that's where GitHub has me covered. So let's get started. If you've already made a project, we'll get to you in a second. I'm going to go ahead, press new project. I'm going to be using the preview version, URP, and I'll be making my project for my next video. I'm just going to cut to when this project's done. No point us all sitting here being bored. So here's my new fresh project. It's going to go ahead and downpage. So with your new project, you need to take a note where your file is saved. So I'm going to right click that and show in Explorer. This is the parent folder of my project. I'm just going to go inside my actual projects folder. That top bar, I'm just going to click it, Control C to copy it, and I'm just going to downpage that. Now let's go ahead and get ourselves GitHub Desktop. For those of you already looking to incorporate GitHub into your existing projects, you can now follow along. Go to desktop.github.com and it will bring you to the GitHub Desktop app download. Now, I can't speak for any platforms outside of Windows, but I would assume that Mac build is identical. So just go ahead, download it and install it. Let's go to our Get Accounts. If you don't have a GitHub account, you're going to need one. Don't worry, easy to set up, easy to use. I'm going to go ahead and open up my Opera GX, create a new tab. We're going to go to GitHub. I'm going to sign in. Now for you, this section will be blank, and it won't be blank for too long because we're about to add our own projects. So again, don't worry if you don't see anything here. That is completely normal. There's two ways to create a project. We can go to File and either create a new repository or add a local repository. Adding a new repository will create a parent folder inside the target location. That isn't going to do what you think it's going to do. You use that option if you're going to make a Unity project inside of your GitHub location. And it doesn't look pretty because it uses tags between each word. What I've found the best way to make a project using GitHub Desktop is using add local repository. And I'll show you both ways. So first, let me show you the way that you think it should work, but it doesn't work. So we press new repository and we choose the location of our project. So I'll show you that I have the right project selected. We have Annihilation First War. Now if we make it here, well then it's not going to be associated to this folder. That is the folder that we care about. So obviously we click on that folder and we say we want this to be a part of our GitHub project. We select that folder, we give it a quick description. I'm not going to initialize this with a readme, there's no need. The .ignore, we're going to be using a Unity.ignore. Unity will have a bunch of folders containing hundreds of files that we don't need as they're generics. So the purpose of GitHub is to take just what we want to back up and put it into an existing project. So we don't have to add all the project files. By rights, you can if you want, but GitHub isn't really designed to be doing large files. You can do large files, but not within the scope of this video. We will do that in another video, but all we want to be doing right now is backing up the core files. And for me, that's just going to be my scripts, version controlling my scripts. So if something breaks down the track, I can simply revert my changes. So I'm going to be using gitignore unity. Next, you'll see license. For me, I'm going to go ahead and make sure I have none selected. However, if you're interested in these, you can look these up on Google and find which one suits your particular needs the most. For example, an MIT license is used for open source projects and states that the original developer be credited for the work that they've done. You can think of these as blank or boilerplate terms and conditions revolving around your project. Again, I'm going to go ahead and click none, and we're going to name the repository. For me, it will be the name of my project. Now, this is what I mean about it creating tags. See how here we have annihilation, tac first, tac war. That's because each space you have in the name will involve a tac. If I remove the space there, you'll see that it doesn't have a tac, obviously. Now, if I create repository and I head on over to that repository, I right click and I press show in Explorer, you can see that there's no Unity project here now. It's just, well, these three items. What's happened? If I go back to the parent folder, GitHub has created a repository inside of a folder inside of the parent folder. This isn't what we want. You can click and drag these out into the parent folder, but that's just extra work and extra steps. Let's go ahead and do this the right way. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete that folder. That way Git isn't associated to my project anymore. GitHub Desktop doesn't like that. I'm just going to tell it to remove that project. And now we're going to start again. You don't have any projects or you want to add a project. What we want to do is go to File, Add Local Repository. We choose the file path. For me, again, here's the parent projects. I go into the project that I want to back up, and that's its folder for the project. These are its contents. We're going to select this folder. Now, you're going to get a red pop-up here saying this directory does not appear to be a Git repository. Would you like to create a new one here instead? Just go ahead and press Create New Repository. Here we have our name. Again, we have to have the tags. You can put those in yourself, or you can use spaces. It really doesn't matter. Just for the sake of the video, we'll keep it as spaces. Here, we're just going to say YouTube video. I'm not going to initialize with a README. The Git, again, I'm going to be using Unity. The license is also going to be none. I'm going to go ahead now and press Create Repository. Here it's asking if we want to use Get LFS. Remember before I was talking about Unity having large files? This is Get's large file system. Go ahead and initialize that. So that way future in your project, if you want to have large files, we can go ahead and use that. It's already implemented and ready to go. But again, I'm not going to be going into that in this video. That's out of the scope for this. We'll go into that another time. Okay, now we have our project, but how do we know this time that it's actually working? Let's go back to our folder here, and now you can see we have our .ignore, our .attributes, and .git file all here in the correct folder now. Let's actually test how this all works. The first thing I need to know is that this repository is only local on your PC. This has not yet been backed up to the cloud. To do that, you need to press Publish Repository. I'm not going to do that just yet. It doesn't matter what order you do this in, but I just want to show how GitHub works. I'm going to open up my Unity project here. I'm going to right click, create folder, create myself a scripts folder. Now that folder is something new on the project. And if we go over to our GitHub Desktop, you can see here it has assets, scripts, meta. Even though we've created a folder, it doesn't tell us that we have just a folder, but it does tell us that we have the meta of that folder. So what we can do is we can right click and we can say ignore all meta files to the gitignore. I click that and then it adds over here the meta. So now you're probably wondering, well, why is this file here now? Well, that's a change. We have changed the .ignore from what it was when it initialized. That is all the files and folders that we're choosing to ignore in our Unity project. So let's say now that you've gone, oh crap, I don't want to actually ignore that. I actually do want to update that. That is a really simple thing to change and edit. Let's go back to our project, and here we have the .ignore. And over on the right hand side here, you can see my preview window. Here we have our folders that we're ignoring. And if we scroll down, we have the type of files that we're ignoring, and down the very bottom are the things that you're choosing to ignore, because it's adding them systematically, right? They're not going to be all jumbled on you. I'm actually going to take a side detour here. Now that we know how to ignore things, let's go ahead and open that. You can open it with any of your IDEs, or you can simply open it with Notepad. Again, for simplicity, I'm going to be using Notepad. So we can see here that it's ignoring the library folder, a temp folder, object build, builds, logs, user settings. If you have custom user settings, you can unignore that file. You will just need to do a bit of work to clean up a few of the things that you don't want to sync. Let's say I've gone to the Unity asset store, or I've gone online and I've decided to buy a third-party asset pack and I download it into my Unity project. So I'm going to right click here and I'm going to say example imported file. Of course that file is empty, but let's go ahead and create some really basic things inside of it to act as if it is an asset pack. So we might have mesh man 1, create object, a sphere, mesh girl 1, dark pill man, and then we have a couple of scripts. Oh, actually, you know what? We've got some materials. So we got a green. It's a really good green, nice and white. There we go, green fixed up. Then we've got a red. Go ahead and assign that red, and then let's go a blue. Assign that to the blue. Just going to go ahead and clear that error. It's annoying me. Here we have 6 items inside our example imported file. We go back to our GitHub over here. You can see that it is adding these. Now, if you import this asset pack, it's very important that you note what rights you have to backing these up. I'm not going to say all, but majority asset creators are going to say that you can't have any form of backup yourself. So you would be in violation of having these assets added up onto GitHub. If, for example, I was like, all right, well, I can just right click and ignore all map files. What if then I have my own map file that I want to keep for myself? Let's say here I have a material and I name it important secret color. Apparently I can't spell, nothing new there. This is my important secret color and I don't want to ignore that. Let's say I've been spending hours getting this particular color happening. Well, there's my important secret color. If I right clicked and pressed ignore all map files, it would ignore the imported red, the imported green, the imported blue, but it would also ignore my secret color one. So how do we get around this? Well, if we look at the files here, the file path, we can see it's under assets, example imported file, and then the file name. I could ignore the asset folder, but again, that would be ignoring everything else I want to keep. So I need to be aiming for the example imported file. I can right click that and press ignore folder. Don't want to ignore assets. We'll ignore the imported file. And there you go. We've now ignored that file. It's just my imported secret color. Now to show that that will always do that for anything in this folder, I can click all of these, Control C, Control V them. Now there's 12 items in there. If I go back to my GitHub, it doesn't care that those new ones have been made. Okay, now let's say this is my file. This is where I've got my prefabs. I'm just going to go ahead and rename this now to prefabs. Because it's a new folder name now, it's been re-added. For our working example, let's say I've ignored this file. And I'm like, oh crap, I didn't mean to ignore that. How can I change that? Well, again, you just simply go to our .ignore, scroll down to the bottom here, and we'll notice it's not there. This is the problem with using a note editor for a file that's actually changing in real time. Anytime something changes, we need to refresh our notepad here. So I'm just going to go ahead and close that. Don't save it. Do not save it unless you make changes that you're specifically after. So let's open this up. I'm going to open it up with Visual Studio Code. And this one here is the one that we've added. I can just simply click that, backspace, Control S to save it, down page, go back to the project, and there we go. Prefabs are now available again. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and delete that prefabs folder. Let's say I do want to keep everything in my project, and it's just that one color I don't care about because, you know, it's a simple color now. It's not super secret. Turns out it was just simple. And right click that, I can just simply ignore that one file. But deleting it works just as easy. And come back to the main point of the video, version controls. Then I'm going to go into my scripts folder, right click, create. I need to get used to this new layout. Kind of like it. Nice and compact. Mono behavior script, and I'm going to say example script. Okay, now that Unity has finished refreshing it, go to my GitHub here, and here you can see we have our example script.cs. Over on the right hand side, we've got our preview. We'll see the contents of that script. Let's go ahead and open that up. I'm using Writer as my IDE, so if you're using Visual Studio Code, don't worry. It's the exact same thing, just the colors are going to look a little bit different. So we can confirm that the contents of this match the contents of this. Let's make some changes. Let's say I want to add a variable. So here we have our updated script. Now let's go ahead and make sure that GitHub sees that there's a change here. Let's go over here, and there you go. As soon as we went back into our GitHub desktop, it has noticed that there's a new line inside inside that script. Let's just go ahead and comment that out, come back, and you'll see it's also commented out here. Now that I've opened up my script, thrown in a couple more files, I'm just going to go ahead and press ignore folder, which is going to be the .idea. For whatever reason, it doesn't want me to ignore that. That's fine. Okay, so I have my script here. So let's go ahead and we'll publish this repository to GitHub. So let's go ahead and click this button here. Now we're going to name our file, how it's going to appear online, our description, and then whether or not we'd like to keep this code private. Me, I don't want to make this code public yet. I can make it public when I want to share the code. But again, you can invite as many people as you want to come view your code. You don't have to have it public to share it with people. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it private. There is an option here for GitHub Enterprise, but the reality is if you've got GitHub Enterprise, you don't need this video. Enterprise is for people that own an official account with GitHub. It's for corporations and so on. Let's go ahead and publish this to the repository. Okay, now that we've published it, we can do a fetch origin. So we're just going to see if there's any changes the website version compared to ours. You can have multiple computers connected to the same project, and that's how you can simply sync everyone up together. Now we need to do our first commit. So if I go to my GitHub repository, we can see that these are all the files that we've added to our project. We want this example script up to the cloud, right? Well, we're going to say here that this creation of example script. I also actually like to put the date in to this part here as well. Totally unnecessary, but I do like to do it regardless. I'm going to go ahead and say it is the 7th day of the 6th month of the year 2024. And the description is, this is a upload test of the example script. Okay, now let's commit this to main. It's now committed and ready to go. Now, if you have permission to push it straight to the repository, so if this is your project, you will have that anyways, you can go ahead and push that to origin. Now, if you're working as part of a collaboration team or intend to work as part of a collaboration team, you can change the branches that you're pushing to. Now, if you don't know what that means, don't worry. This is out of the scope for this video. If you already know what that stuff is, the option's right there. So it's super easy and super user-friendly to use, right? Okay, so now we've made our changes. Let's go back to our repository online and see if we can find those updates. So here you can see that there was creation of example script 0706-2024. That means that that commit I just uploaded then is changing the name of these here. There was that project settings file that was uploaded into the project settings. There was the .ignore, which is updated because of course we've ignored the meta files and stuff. There's also our assets, which of course have been changed. So if I go ahead and click assets, and in here we have scenes, scripts, settings, tutorial information, all the other meta files. We can go to scripts, and there's our example script right there. What if I want to have my meta files not ignored anymore? Now, let's say I'm working remotely now and I've left my computer at home and someone else is adding something to the project and I want my meta files to no longer be ignored when I'm uploading them, because this is now ignoring it for everyone, right? Because it's the .ignore. Well, let's go back to the parent file and the .ignore here. We can click on that. We can go here, edit this file, scroll down for our meta and simply delete that. Also going to delete this, and now I can press commit changes. The message is updating.ignore. I can put in here the date again like I normally do, so I will 07/06/2024, and I can put in the time too if I want to be more precise. I do that in my personal projects. Again, that is totally unnecessary. You do not need to do that because GitHub already has a system for managing that. I like to see it all there. It helps. And we can add extended description here. I can say have reintroduce.meta while syncing. I'm going to commit that change, and now we can see that has been saved. Now if I go back to my GitHub desktop and I fetch from the origin, you can see that there's a pool sitting there. I press pool. What that's just done is I've just updated my GitHub. As simple as that. I am now in the same version as what's in my GitHub repository. That's why now the meta is sitting there and the example script meta is also sitting there. And that was it. That was as simple as the sync. Now that the change has been made, I can now commit these meta files. Now say post pull request add meta files. And the description again, we can just say .meta files have been re-added to the sync. Again, we can put the date in there if we want. Totally unnecessary, me being me, and commit to main. Let's push it to sync it. And that's it. We can also click history here and we can see the changes that we've made. So we have the initial commit, what we've committed. These are all the files that were committed. This is when we create our project. Then we've got our creation of the example script and we've uploaded that example script to Git. Then we've updated our .ignore, but you can see here that we've removed these lines because they're red. Red means we've removed. This is what we got. And now we've re-added the meta files, and we've added 10 lines of code because of these meta files. Now, let's assume that I've created something that has ruined my project. Simply to ruin the project, we'll just put in a line of code here that shouldn't be here. Same. Throwing that there, it's throwing an error, of course, and our Unity project isn't going to be able to compile. There's our error. If you had no idea where your error was coming from and you couldn't fix it, and it's come from a project that you've imported, rather than shifting through hundreds of lines of code, you'd be scared that you've ruined your project. Let's assume I didn't catch this fault, and I've just gone ahead and I've gone updated example script. And again, I'm just going to chuck in the date here. Again, totally unnecessary. Don't need to do it. You know what I'm saying? I've expanded functionality to the example script, and now I'm going to go ahead and commit that to main. And going to go ahead and push it to the actual cloud. Anyone who downloads this file are going to be met with the same error. And now you're sitting here and you're going, oh no, what have I done? What have I done? Fear not, for GitHub version control is here again to save the day. Let's go back to our parent here and look at the last change. We have the update example script, and we just click on that, and here's I shouldn't be here. We can see the change. How do we go ahead and go about fixing this? Of course, we could just go into the code, go to the file that was uploaded. We could edit this file and remove that line manually, or we can do it through the version control system. So let's go ahead and do it through the version control system. After all, that's what we want to be using here. If we come back to our GitHub desktop and we click on history, we can see here that we have added this 10 minutes ago. We can right click this and amend the commit. Amending it will simply we'll change the name and the description. We can revert the changes. So now it's removed that line. Now if we go back to our script, you can see that it's removed that error. And that is simply resyncing our project prior to the changes. We want to make sure that we push this to the repository. We don't want to leave our repository broken. So let's go ahead and make sure that we sync this change back to the repository. So now refresh this. You can see here it says revert updated example script. Just click on that and you can see that we have removed that line because it's red. Click on assets, scripts, example script, and then you can see it's working. If I go back to my Unity project, you can see that the console is clear. Okay, looks like I'm going to show you how to delete a repository as well. And then I'm going to go over to here and I'm going to go to my repositories, this one here, Annihilation First War. I'm going to click on that one, go to settings, scroll all the way down, and I'm going to press delete this repository. I want to delete this repository. I understand bad things will happen. I'm going to just select this, copy it, paste it in, and delete. Repository has been successfully deleted. GitHub Desktop is extremely easy and simple to use. You don't need to use any console commands. You can control your commits, you can control your repositories, your branches, and you can simply and easily apply and revert changes at any time you need to. So hopefully this video has helped you out and gives you some confidence on getting back into your projects, not fearing that you're going to make any mistakes, and that if you do make mistakes, it doesn't matter because you can easily revert those. I hope this helps you out. I wish there was a video that went into this depth for me at the start, especially not wanting to have to learn how to do all the different entries and console commands. Again, GitHub Desktop, super easy to use, and thank God it's out there because it is a lifesaver. It is a game changer, especially when you're starting out and making lots of mistakes. All the best, and looking forward to seeing what you make.